Graveyard Keeper is a slightly morbid take on the farming sim genre. After a fateful meeting with Truck-kun one night, you are then tasked with taking care of a medieval village's church and cemetery. This includes the standard tasks of crafting, fishing, fighting monsters, growing crops, and a few other things. Overall, the game is fine. I can honestly see why some people enjoy playing this. For me though, the more I think about it, the worse the game is. Which is a big problem, because if you were to ask me to make a game like this, I would end up making something very similar. The game has a great pixel art style. I mean, the art is the best thing about the game. The environments jump around from mundane village to creepy haunted house attraction fairly well. There are also some nice weather effects for fog and rain. I found the user interface to be a bit confusing. Your map, inventory, quest log, and skill trees are all in one place. You just swap between the different pages, and I constantly found myself opening up the menu, looking for the inventory, and seeing the talent tree or map, which just made me close the menu and then try again just to see the exact same menu pop up. I'm not sure why, but having them all in one place here just breaks my brain for some reason. There is a bug where the item counter breaks when making multiple items at a crafting bench, but it's easy to fix it just fiddling with the menus. Speaking of bugs, I did run into two more. I somehow got stuck unable to move after unlocking the dungeon by talking to the zombie chained to the wall. Then I somehow got to move around while talking to the priest after completing a quest. I'm not sure how I feel about the game's audio. As far as sound effects go, it's fine. They're what you would expect, and nothing seems out of place. The music is a bit of a different story. Like, the music isn't bad, it just goes in one ear and out the other. At the same time, I'm not entirely comfortable calling it bland. It just doesn't have any staying power. A large part of the game is crafting, which by the end of the game means running around to different crafting stations just to make the item you need. Some items, like ingots, are made on a timer, so if you need more nails and are out of iron ingots, you're just waiting for the smelter to do its job. Crafting other items is just using the appropriate crafting station, picking out how many you need, and then holding down the craft button. Crafting materials are pulled from your inventory and the local storage containers. Multiple items can be queued up in this fashion, and if a component for the final item is in the queue, it will swap between the two items. So there is some quality of life when making stuff. There's also some automation that you can unlock in the game. I never saw much use for the automation for crafting, especially if you have all the DLCs, but I'll get into why later. One of the problems I have with all the crafting is that you can only build certain crafting stations in designated places. Some of it makes sense, like you don't want some of the stuff you're doing to be seen out in the open. On top of that, you're confined by where certain items can go. Some items you make have predetermined positions, and there's no way to change that. The furniture you can place in the church is the best example for this. The pews, candles, and confessional booths all have their own little spots picked out for you. This just ends up making me feel like the game has a paint-by-numbers feel to it. Another problem with the crafting is when you start making items with qualities. When making an item with quality, there are only 3 outcomes denoted by a star. The biggest problem with making an item with quality is that you cannot queue up multiple items when crafting. You are forced into making them one at a time. You can also fail to create the item at the quality you want. Using all silver quality ingredients can produce a copper quality item. Some of the recipes need in-game perks for you to reliably create the item you want, with one of the perks being locked behind a choice you make at the end of a DLC's questline. Also, the crafting UI will taunt you with the perk even if you don't have the DLC. Oh, and if an NPC wants a specific quality of an item, you need to get that exact quality. Obviously, they won't accept a worse one, but not taking a gold star item when they want a copper or silver one is just aggravating. Then there's my least liked crafting process, alchemy. The entire process of going from ingredients to usable item using alchemy is long drawn out, and if you're going into this without guides, relies on trial and error. The first step in making anything with alchemy is getting an item. Then you need to research that item to see if it can be used as an ingredient. You can research most items in the game, not just the ones for alchemy. The researching process takes science, which you get from paper, and that has its own little crafting process, and the faith you get from sermons. After completing the research, the game will tell you if the item can be broken down into one of 3 different components: powders, solutions, or extracts. Breaking the item down is done one ingredient at a time at a unique crafting station based on what item you want the outcome to be. Then you take those items to one of two different alchemy tables to be mixed together, which, if successful, makes an item. If it fails, you end up with a goop that you need 3 of to turn into a component to try again. The alchemy tables remember successful outcomes, but all the trouble for making something just makes me look up a guide for the whole process. Most crafting recipes also create one of 3 currencies for unlocking more stuff to make or perks. Physical labor makes red points, agricultural or cooking yields green points, and spiritual or artistic works give you blue points. You can also get a good amount of points from researching items. This is a one-time thing from the item research, and what and how much you get is based on the item. The perks vary from making crafting more efficient to not getting hurt collecting honey from beehives. There are a lot of different talents, but there are a set amount of them you need to get to progress through the game. The DLCs also add more talents, but most of them are just alternative ways to get the items you could get in the base game. Unlocking the techs on the tech tree is done by progressing through quest lines in the game. For the base game, there are 6 different quest givers, 1 for each day of the week. The tasks you are given depend on who is giving them. For instance, the priest wants you to make the graveyard and church better. Completing quests give you reputation points with that NPC, and you can use those points to unlock dialogue and items for other quests. There are also some vendors with a similar reputation mechanic. You increase your standing with them by buying and selling items to them, and after a certain amount they will sell you additional stuff. As for the combat, it's very face tanky, but that just might be how I'm playing the game. Every time you swing your sword, it costs stamina. You'll find most of the enemies in the dungeon under your house. It has 15 floors, you need to defeat all the monsters on a floor to go deeper, and once you defeat all the monsters on a floor, they're gone for good. You can spam items to restore health and stamina with no cooldown or animation to slow you down. There's also no real punishment for dying from combat, you just get teleported back to your house. There are predetermined fishing spots on the map that you can fish from. What fish you catch depends on where you are, what rod you're using, and your choice of bait. The minigame for fishing is the same one from Stardew Valley. You wait for a fish to bite, and then try to keep the bar in the right spot to reel in the fish. There are 2 changes from Stardew Valley, and that is fishing drains stamina when you miss a bite, and you can tell what fish you can catch while charging a cast of the rod. The game will show you what fish you can catch, and the chance to land a specific fish once you've caught one. If there's no fish to catch, the game forces you to start over, which is nice. Growing crops is very simple. Once you unlock the field to grow crops in, you just prep an area to grow stuff, choose a fertilizer, plant 4 seeds for the crop you want, then just wait. You don't have to water the plants, they just pop up on their own after a while. Some of the crops have different qualities, and getting and keeping seeds for that crop can be annoying at first. Once you get a way to make higher quality fertilizer and grab a perk off the talent tree, it then becomes one of the easiest ways to make money. Each action you take in this game consumes some resource. The resources that you spend the most are time and stamina. You're never getting the time back, but cooking can help with restoring stamina, to a point. There are a lot of different recipes for food, maybe too many. They all help with restoring stamina, and some of them have buffs, like having to spend less time sleeping or getting more talent points from research. As I said earlier, these are all things I would put in a game like this. The only real change I would make as far as the crafting goes would be in service of making the church or monastery more self-sufficient. Here the reason you're doing all of this is that you're trying to be a one-person economy. Not only are you forced into this by the quest givers, but the easiest way to complete quests or do some of the crafting is just by buying what you need to progress. There are a few hard money gates for progress, but the only unreasonable one is at the end of a quest line. Now, with all that out of the way, let's deal with the dead. You get corpses carted in by the talking communist donkey. You also get your first crop seeds from the donkey, in what is, in retrospect, a great metaphor for what the game entails. Getting crap from someone and then a chore that needs to be done for them. You need to feed the donkey carrots for him to bring you more dead bodies. The bodies are dropped off at the morgue, and then you need to prepare them for their afterlife. Each body has a number of skulls, white ones are good, red ones are bad. Your job for preparing a corpse is to try to maximize the white skulls over the red ones. This can be done by removing certain body parts, getting perks to minimize the mess you make during the autopsies, and later on embalming. You also don't want to wait around getting to a corpse once it's been delivered. If you take too long, enough of the corpse starts decaying and starts losing white skulls. Then once you're done playing doctor on a corpse, you get to pick one of 4 fates for the body. The obvious choice is plopping them in a grave. Then you need to make and place a headstone and a fence for the grave to decorate the graveyard. How many points that go towards making the graveyard look better are based on 3 things. The first 2 are the number of skulls the body has. The red ones eat into the beauty of the decoration, and you can't get more points than the amount of white skulls. The other is the material of the grave markers. Stone is better than wood, and marble is better than stone. Next up is cremation, where you burn a body in a pyre. This is a good choice if you completely botched an autopsy or the corpse was just horrible to begin with. When you do this, you get a small pile of ash and salt. The ash can then be placed in an urn as part of a mausoleum to make the graveyard nicer, or be used in other recipes like making fertilizer for your crops. For burying or burning a body, you get a burial certificate, which you then can trade in for some money. You can also remove a corpse that is in the ground, but that costs money. You can get another burial certificate depending on how you deal with the body, but you're still going to be in the red for removing it. Which leaves us with the other 2 methods, the easiest of which is just chucking the corpse into the river. You don't get paid for this, which is the only downside to it, even if the game implies something else bad might happen. Okay, while writing the script I found out that if you're not on PC, this next part is a paid DLC. Locking off one of the biggest quality of life mechanics behind a paywall is just taking things to another level of terrible. With that said, the last thing you can do is reanimate the body to be a mindless worker drone. What you can get your zombie to do depends on what tech you have unlocked in the skill tree. The most useful thing for me personally was just making them collect and haul around crafting resources. Largely this is because making the items is not the problem. It's getting the items from point A to point B. There's also the problem that resurrecting a corpse is very resource intensive. You need to make a potion with alchemy, spend some faith, and this is on top of losing out on being paid for the burial. Then how effective a zombie is at its job is based on how many white skulls the corpse has. It also doesn't help that the other DLCs give you similar automation methods as the zombies without needing to invest in any talents. The game's store page tries to sell you on this game having some hard moral choices. Build and manage a medieval graveyard while facing ethical dilemmas and making questionable decisions. Despite what the blurb says, there really aren't any ethical dilemmas or decisions to be made in the game. Some of the biggest choices in the base game as far as questlines go is, do I buy an item or do I craft it? You have to help the local Inquisition by providing a concession stand for the witch burning. You need to help set up a weird cult in your basement. You need to hand out people parts in order to progress through the game. The decisions you do make during the main plot either don't matter or have already been made for you. Right off the bat, I can think of 2 really good ways to put in some moral dilemmas in the game. One of the things that you need for some in-game crafting recipes is jewelry. Now, where do you think someone in charge of keeping a graveyard would get that from? You can either go through the process of making it yourself, or just buy it from a vendor. What? Get them from the dead bodies in your care? I'm sorry, but you only deal in the ethical harvesting of people parts here. I mean, taking the items off the dead body could have added more sin to the corpse or something. The other is that you get paid by commission for burials. Like, let's say that some rich family shows up wanting you to bury one of their departed. You would get paid based on how well decorated their grave is. The only problem is that there's no way the body would add to your graveyard's prestige. You would then be given a choice in doing what they want for the money, or putting in a more deserving corpse in the grave and just saying that it is Uncle Moneybags. I mean, how would they know? It's not like they would come out and dig the guy up to check. I mean, it's not like the game has consequences anyway. Speaking of consequences, something that gets brought up early in the game is that you shouldn't be going around telling people what you get up to exactly. The problem is that if you do tell people, it doesn't do anything. They just sit there and act like you're joking or just brush it off completely. In one of the DLCs, one of the characters knows exactly what you're getting up to and wants to put an end to it. Like, it gets to the point of them calling for your execution. And then it's just dropped. The first problem I encountered while playing the game is the lack of structure. For the sake of comparison, in Stardew Valley, a day starts at 6 AM and has a hard end at 2 AM. I know when a day starts and when one ends, so I can plan my activities around that. Here, you go to sleep either when you want to save or get a debuff that basically halves your stamina bar. You also don't really have a good idea what time of day it is just by looking at the UI, which means that you can't tell how long you have until a quest NPC leaves or a shopkeeper is going to be out selling their wares. The lack of any structure in the day-to-day cycle made it hard to decide on what tasks I need to focus on, which snowballs into you taking longer to make progress in the game, which causes the whole game to drag to a halt, which causes everything to kind of bleed together. It feels like the game enjoys wasting your time. A good example of this is how you interact with the weekly quest NPCs. The quest givers will only talk to you once they are in their designated spot. If you run into them while they're traveling to that spot, they don't want to talk to you. If you're too late, you're stuck waiting till next week just for another chance to talk to them. Then, when you do complete tasks, they will tell you that they need a week before getting your next one, or they then come up with some inane reason for stalling out the next part of the quest line. As an example, I had completed the task necessary to upgrade the church by improving it in the graveyard. I am then told I need to go get some paperwork to finish the upgrade, by some collection of pixels that claims to hate bureaucratic nonsense. I didn't have enough money to buy the forms and had to run off to scrounge up the money for them. If I didn't, I couldn't hold service in the church that week, which would mean losing out on a week's worth of donations and faith. This is one of those moments where it stops feeling like a video game and instead feels like being stuck in the DMV. Oh, and that was just one moment that came up naturally in gameplay. There's another quest where you need to get an amulet from an adventuring monster hunter in town. This then goes into a cutscene where you... Wait, I apparently forgot to bring a plank. Ugh. Where you just wait outside of town to ambush them to get the amulet. So you're stuck watching this cutscene for way longer than necessary just because the game wants to make a reference to The Witcher. There are also 4 DLCs for the game, and, well, the best part about them is their names, and that's just riffing off popular show names. The most the DLCs do is just add more busy work for you to do, and while the rewards for playing one of them is useful, it just feels like a band-aid for the base game. The DLCs are also pretty well integrated into the game in a way that they don't feel too out of place from the base game. Which is both good and bad in a way because 2 of the DLCs just blend together due to you needing to fill up a bar to unlock more tasks. The first DLC is Breaking Dead, which lets you bring back the dead zombies to haul stuff. I already talked about this one, so moving on. Stranger Sins has you running a tavern to discover the past of the people in the village. The tavern management is fine for the most part, you just need to keep it stocked with food and booze to make money. The good things that come with the DLC are another source of income and a way to mass-produce meals with the oven. I have 3 problems with this DLC. The first is how you acquire the building permit to make the tavern. With how utterly cynical everyone in the village is, I'm shocked that tricking the crazy old man into taking on a massive amount of debt actually worked. It honestly seems like someone else would have been abusing this long before you arrived in the village. As for the main content, it's just a bunch of fetch quests to learn that this place went from a Roman and/or Greek paradise to a medieval purgatory. The final thing is the starting cutscene for the Look into the Past is just a Star Wars title crawl. It's not too long, but it still feels like this is wasting your time and beating you over the head with the reference. What makes this particularly infuriating is that I know the developers know how to do the pop culture reference thing properly. Like at the beginning of the game, you get put on the spot to come up with something for sermons. Yeah, it takes a bit for the character to spit something out, but that at least feels relatable. Because what are you going to say when put on the spot like that? Live long and prosper? Or in the Better Save Soul DLC, there's a ghost called Smiler, which is an anagram of Slimer. Like, they know how to make the reference and then just move on. It's the hanging on the reference that makes it insufferable. Game of Crone pits you against the Inquisition by building a refugee camp for escaped prisoners. There are also 2 side stories in this one where you help the Donkey start a revolution and hunt a vampire. The problems with this DLC are all on the refugee camp. You need to wait for a bar to fill up before you can make any upgrades to the camp. To get the bar to fill, you need to supply the camp with both food and water. Then, once you make an upgrade, it's time to start all over. This is also on top of needing crafting supplies to make the upgrade. Like, I can get what the developers intended with this, Building up the camp is supposed to be something going on in the background while you're doing other things. The execution just makes me feel like it was another thing I had to slog through, especially at the end when the upgrades needed a fully charged progress bar to make one thing. Then there's the reward for doing all this. The items you get are at or near the end of their respective tech trees, and are another way of getting the items needed for quests in the base game. There are also some bags. The bags take up an inventory slot. You have to lose an inventory space to get a larger inventory. There are also some perks you can get for completing the DLC, but they're borderline useless. Mostly because by the time you get the perks, you're either almost done with the base game or have completed it. The reason I have a problem with these rewards is that it feels like the developers are admitting there's a problem with the game and are slapping on a band-aid to fix it. Except, this is a paid DLC. Better Save Soul was the DLC that I was most excited to play. Mostly because it tied into what I thought the main premise of the game was the most, and that's dealing with the souls of the departed. While you do help the souls move on to the afterlife, the problem is the way you help the souls is basically just running them through a washing machine built by Dr. Frankenstein and the Ghostbusters. I thought that the process of helping the spirits would be more involved. The big reward for progressing through the DLC is getting better automation through using ghost power. You also get some rather nicely done pixel art renditions of the 7 deadly sins in the church as a slideshow, but that doesn't really do anything except look nice. Graveyard Keeper costs $20 for the base game, and each DLC costs $10 when it's not on sale. You can get it from either Steam or GOG. No, I don't recommend the game or its DLC. What I wanted was a game where I had to make hard choices while dealing with the dead. What I ended up playing is a game where my time is wasted running errands for others. Where my side gig is being a necromancer. But I'm a necromancer in the same way the Count from Sesame Street is a vampire. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.